Good afternoon. My name is Joe Hallman, and with me today I have Michael Davidson and Rob Paget, who are part of the Synapse team based here in Huntsville. First, I want to say thank you for joining us today on the webinar. I know everybody's busy, so we really do appreciate you guys spending some of your time with us today. A few housekeeping items. If you have questions during the presentation, please use the Q&A button at the top or bottom of your screen, and that'll depend on what kind of device you joined on today, and just type your question in there. I'll try to answer the questions as they come in, and we'll also have some time at the end of the presentation to take some other questions. Webinar today is about parking garages and the opportunities for lighting controls in these environments. So like the email invitation said, parking garages are a whole lot of opportunities, but they are also a lot of challenges that exist there. So I'm going to begin today by talking about the structure itself and why parking garages are such a unique environment for lighting designers, installers, and lighting agents. Then we'll hear from Michael Davidson. He's a solutions architect engineer here at Synapse and has years of hands-on field experience, and is also very involved in different industry groups and organizations. Michael's going to walk us through some of the energy codes and regulations and the key parts that apply to parking garages. Then we'll hear from Rob Paget, who is a senior systems engineer at Synapse and a key member of the solutions engineering team. He works directly with customers. He's involved in commissioning and supporting our customers. So he's going to talk to us about some of his real world experiences and some of the common problems he's seen in parking garages and how we address each one. So let's try something real quick, just to kind of get us in the right mindset and focused on and thinking about parking garages. I want everybody to try to just think about the last time that you drove into a large parking structure. It may have been a while for some of us, so we may have to think a little harder. But how big was it? How did things change as you drove in and went up different levels or went down different levels? How did things change as you went from one side of the structure to the other? Was it dark or was it really bright? Did people have their headlights on? It's probably a mixture of both bright spots and dark spots. So that's the first kind of observation about these structures, is that they're dynamic and they're in a constant state of change. And what I mean by that is there are lots of different areas where the natural light levels just change frequently. Each floor is different. The bottom floors are kind of like a basement. They have no natural light at all. And then a lot of times the top level is just basically a parking lot with an open environment with direct sunlight. The angle of the sun changes, different times of the day. Different areas will get different amounts of sun, and even that changes during different seasons. Weather's another variable. A cloudy day with a lot of rain, you're not going to get much natural light where you normally would. The surrounding area can also change. You might have a empty lot next to a parking garage one year, and then a large building could get built right next door and cast a very large shadow over an area that once was in direct sunlight. Trees get taller each year. They also lose their leaves part of the year in fall. So you've got, I guess what I'm trying to say is changes will happen and they will continue in these environments. Each structure is also unique, kind of like a snowflake or fingerprint. No two are identical. Businesses or company garages, sports complexes, and residential garages, they're all very different than, say, a retail parking garage. They have different operating hours, different level of traffic volume coming in and out of the garage. And all of those examples are different than, say, an airport or a hospital garage, right? Another unique element is that the garage may have different fixtures required in different parts. Some of these will include pathway lights, or wall packs, or they have a sign to the entrance of the parking garage, and others won't. And then depending on where the garage is located, you've got different energy codes and regulations that come into play. So there's multiple ways that these sites are also managed. It might be a local person that's on site. It might be contracted out to a service company, or it could be a remote person in a different city. Last piece you've got is kind of the scale of the system. That's another variable. Some have just a few floors, but they're as long as a football field, like in the image on the slide there. Others have a really small footprint, like if they're in a downtown area, but they make up for that in height. You may have customers that operate multiple garages. They could be in adjacent locations just across the street from each other, or they could be scattered about the city, or even in different cities or different towns, different states. How are they planning to manage the lights across all these properties? Some may just deal with multiple small systems. Others may want a more centralized approach. So that's kind of my last slide to kind of get us thinking about these environments. And that should give you kind of a good idea of why these structures are such a good opportunity for lighting controls. Because of all the factors I just listed, I really don't think there's a way that the lights can be managed very well without a lighting control system in place. So with that, I'm going to let Michael take over and talk about energy regulations. So let me stop this. Let Michael, you've got the floor.
Thank you, Joe. So just, a couple of years ago, the idea of like energy savings was just a photo cell stuck out in a parking lot, or a time clock in a building somewhere, or maybe just a motion sensor. So today, things have gotten a little bit tougher. There's lots of different codes. Most states have adopted some kind of energy code. And the utilities have been incentivizing the customers to adopt controls by giving them rebates that pays pretty much for the LEDs and sometimes practically, the controls and the LEDs combined. So if you take a look at this map on the right here, this is an updated ASHRAE map, and you can see by the colors, each state has adopted a different year's covering. There's a new one out, 2019, and there'll be a new map out. Nobody's adopted it yet, but it's coming really fast and soon. So some of the codes that are older aren't as stringent, so you don't have as many requirements, but some of the newer codes like 2016, 2019 are much more stringent. So every 3 years, these agencies or standards bodies will go off and revise the codes, and they'll update them. And the key for the updates is improvements in technology. With the LEDs, it's driving like 3 factors. Efficacy increases, so you get more light. Efficiency increases, so you use less power. And there's adoption of newer technology. The controls are getting smarter and cheaper and easier to apply. So to meet these new version of codes, it's going to require some kind of control system, and usually it's called a networked lighting control system. It's referred to as an NLC, and this will have the lights all talking to each other, passing information back and forth to a main GUI or console. And the requirements, they've pretty much moved the needle big time to improve energy savings. Like for instance, last year, Title 24 and ASHRAE 90.1 published new updates for 2019. And these updates, have done some good things, as well as made things a little bit harder. The good things is they've eliminated many of the exceptions, so it's easier to read the code, it's more concise. They've made the requirements for defined areas pretty much the same, so the hallway versus an atrium versus a cafeteria are all pretty much the same now versus being totally different. Another thing is reduction of light within occupant leaving. Some of the codes are saying 15 minutes, others are 20. And so it's gotten tougher. Last year it was 30 and 20 for the 2016 requirements. So things are getting a little bit tighter, and it's kind of hard to do it now just with a luminaire-based control. you're going to need something that's networked so you can have zones and handle those different timeouts requirements. Also, something that's gotten tougher with ASHRAE and Title 24 is requiring continuous dimming for daylight response and control. And the biggest aspect that you really have to look at is the reason they've tightened these codes up is they don't want you to light spaces when light's not needed. There's nobody there. So reduce the lighting when it's not needed is the biggest key. So how do we put these energy codes into practice? Do we sit and read like a 500-page document? No, you really need to adopt a network control system that has lots of flexibility and a lot of smarts built into it. So one of the biggest things is schedules. You've got to have flexible schedules. Businesses have different hours. Sometimes they're 8 to 5. Other times they're 6 to 9 o'clock at night. In some places, they stay open till 11 o'clock or 12 midnight. So you need flexibility. Those hours change by the days and by weeks. You got to have holidays built in. Also, you got to have special events, built in. So all that needs to be able to have very flexible schedules. You need to have flexible zones. So you group lights together. I think that's real key to being efficient and having the right lights on at the right time. Then, of course, you got to fold in motion sensors to tell you when nobody's there. There's no need to have the lights on, or maybe at a reduced level for safety. Then also light sensors, fold in to take advantage of natural daylight. So what I'm going to do is turn the floor over to Rob to show how we can solve some of these problems. He's going to give you some real world examples of how to go implement these systems.
All right, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
All right, and my screen up. All right, so as you've already heard from Joe and from Michael, parking garages are unique environments, so they present challenges that you don't typically run into with site and area lighting. For wireless communication in a parking garage, you usually don't have clear line of sight between the lights like you would in a parking lot. If you look at these examples here, you've got these steel beams that are between lights. In this example, these are concrete beams or girders, and so the lights are recessed in there so they can't communicate directly. And then you've got in this garage, the lights are actually installed below the concrete structure so they can communicate directly, but where I'm standing and taking this picture, there's another garage right next door, so lights have to communicate across garages, across multiple levels. You've got wall packs, there's sensors involved. So in general, there's just more involved from a technology standpoint in making all of this work. So one of the ways we overcome this is with our patented wireless mesh. So Synapse, we were founded 13 years ago based on this technology. The way we relay messages to and from lights and sensors is very unique. It was built by our team in Huntsville from the ground up. And while the technology that's involved in pulling all of this off is complex, it's all done in the background so that what's presented to the customer is a system that just works, where lights in occupancy zones are responding quickly to motion activity as cars are moving throughout the structure. Lights in daylight zones are continuously dimming, during sunrise, sunset, when clouds come over, and where property owners are being proactively notified about maintenance problems when there are issues with lights in their system. Now, before I jump into our approach to solving common problems for these parking garage applications, I do want to review a couple things. For those of you that weren't able to attend the last webinar we did a few weeks ago, I did cover this in more detail there. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that, make sure and go back and check that one out. Joe's going to be sending out a link at the end of the webinar, and so you'll be able to get to that presentation from there. In a nutshell, though, every SimplySnap system has at least one gateway and some number of lights. In this picture, we have our central base station. This is our outdoor rated gateway. It's in a NEMA box, has a 5-button switch. It can be managed locally or remotely. It has multiple connectivity options, Wi-Fi, Ethernet, cellular. And as far as the lights go, for the audience of this webinar, you'll most likely be using fixtures that already have our controllers embedded. So all you have to do is select a SKU from your manufacturer that includes our controls. And that should make things a little easier on the ordering side. And then as far as setup and system management is concerned, if the customers want to make changes to the system, they can do it from pretty much any device with a web browser. There's no server to install. There's no app to download. It just works from just about any device, like a smartphone, tablet, desktop computer. The picture on the left shows an example of inside of a light, how our controller would be integrated, connected up, talking to the driver. For LED retrofits, we do have the IP65 rated controller, the DIMM-10 220. It can be mounted on a pole or mounted directly to the light with a 1/2-inch nipple connector. And then our twist lock controllers, there's a 277 480 volt version that'll fit any standard NEMA socket. So if you've already got a light, especially like Joe mentioned on the top level of a parking deck that has the NEMA socket, you can very easily add controls to that with the twist lock controller. It also has the built-in photocell. Okay, so on our solutions engineering team, we've been involved in quoting and commissioning parking projects, parking garage projects over the last couple of years. And I want to share some of the things that we've heard from customers who've been using our system and some who have used other systems that are out on the market. So I've broken this down into 6 key problem areas that they've told us that they need their lighting controls to solve. So the first one is, I need to be able to make adjustments to the lights myself. It has to be easy to use. I don't think we can overstate this. Everyone who's had a chance to use SimplySnap firsthand loves it. It's very easy to use. The lights can be set up to operate in any way the customer wants them to. When you log in, you get real quick feedback on the status of the lights, what dimming level the lights are at, what state the motion sensors are in. If you've got daylight sensors, you can see the levels that they're measuring, power, communication status. Again, pretty much anything you would need to see or do is right there at your fingertips. There's no app to download. Like I mentioned, it works on any device. I was on my couch Tuesday night taking screenshots for this presentation. I was using my iPhone, my iPad, my MacBook, logging into sites and grabbing those screenshots. I mean, that just really highlights how flexible it is. And you can really log into SimplySnap from anywhere and use it from just about any device. So if we're making the case that it's important for customers to be able to make adjustments to SimplySnap, what kinds of adjustments might they want to make? So I'm going to go through 3 common examples of changes a customer might make to their system. So first, we're going to go change the dimming level for lights in a zone. Then we're going to update the schedule, kind of like Michael mentioned. There's changing environments. There maybe needs to change the schedule throughout the year. And then changing the behavior of a scene. So for this first example, we're going to use the exterior lighting zone. So I've got a group here. You can see there are 16 lights. And this is for, on a particular level, the lights that are around the perimeter of a level. So let's say I want to manually control those. I select that zone. It's going to give me a drop down showing me all of the lights that are in that zone. And I can see here's my controls on, off, and dimming. So very quickly, if I want to make changes to that zone, all I have to do is move the dimming slider. So in this case, 25%. All of the lights in that zone are going to respond immediately. Now, to change the dimming level for an individual light, just like with the zone control, you can click or touch the dimming slider right next to that light, and the light is going to respond. We also have the option, if you can't find where a light is, you're seeing a problem, you can click blink. The light's going to turn on and off and can kind of help you locate that light within the facility. If you haven't had a chance to play around with this, it demos really well for customers. The lights respond to the UI immediately, even in really large environments, and it's very impressive to see in person. Okay, so let's say a customer wants to make a change to a schedule. So the owner of a garage, they've got an overnight schedule that runs, that changes into an occupancy state at 11 p.m. Well, they've realized that, there's really not a lot of activity happening after 9 o'clock. So what if I bump that time up to get some additional energy savings? So all you have to do is we go look at the schedule. I see here's my 11 o'clock event that runs. Click on the 3 dots next to that event. Click Edit Series. And so here I can see that event is set to run at 11 p.m. 7 days a week. So all I have to do to change the time for that event, click on the start time, go change it to the new time that I want. In this case, is going to be 9 p.m. Click Done and then click Save. And now I can see here's my updated schedule to run at 9 o'clock. So that's very straightforward. Now, I mentioned that overnight occupancy schedule. Let's say the user wants to change the dimming level when occupancy is detected. So right now, their system is set up that when a car drives through or zone detects occupancy, bring the lights up to 100%. Well, they've noticed that when they're in the structure, there really isn't a significant light level difference between 100% and 60% dimming. There's still plenty of light in the space. But looking at the power measurements from the system, they could see they get a 41% energy savings if they use 60 versus 100. So in this case, we're going to go change that scene that runs overnight from when occupancy is detected to change the lights to 60 instead of 100%. So when you tap on a scene, it's going to give you some context. I can see this is an occupancy scene. Here's the zones that are affected. I'm going to go and click edit. And then here are the details. This is an occupancy scene. When occupancy is detected, the lights go to 100%. If I want to change that, scroll down, change my occupancy level to 60%. And I also can change, Michael mentioned those timeouts, 30 minutes, 5 minutes, an hour. That's all configurable. So very flexible depending on what the customer needs. And the vacancy dimming levels, there's 2 steps. So in this case, we're not going to change those, just leave them at 30%. Scroll down, hit save changes, and there you go. Very straightforward. In under a couple of minutes, we're able to make 3 programming changes to the system. So I hope that demonstrates to you how easy it is to use and that really anyone can do it. All right, problem number 2, I need to meet energy codes in my area. So we've already talked about that. So we've designed SimplySnap so that it can work with a variety of different sensor configurations in order to be energy code compliant. So for occupancy, we work with just about every motion sensor on the market, and that gives fixture manufacturers and customers the flexibility to use the best motion sensor for the application. For a lot of newer installs, there's a motion sensor installed in every light. So if there's a section of the garage where there isn't adequate sensor coverage from those integrated sensors, you can easily add a standalone sensor. Because the zoning is all network-based, like Michael mentioned, you can have a sensor near an elevator or near an on-ramp to a level, and when it detects occupancy, it can bring all of the lights on that level, which would increase the safety of that area. So in this picture here, you see an example. Here's our remote mount sensor box. This is just a very easy out-of-the-box solution that you can install any place in the garage where you want to add additional occupancy sensing. Now that same sensor can also work in what we're going to talk about here in a second for the daylight control options. Now there are 2 types of daylight control. The first one is just on-off control. And for parking structures, you're typically only going to see that if the top level is open air. In those scenarios, if you already have one of our twist lock controllers on the lights that are on the top level, those have built-in photocells, so you could use that. But if you do need to add a photocell, it's very easy to do. So in this case, this is the top of a building. You can see here's a photocell pointing down. So that's used to turn the lights on or off at sunrise or sunset, which you don't have to have that. You can also use the schedule that's built into the system as well, the astronomical schedule to do sunrise, sunset, dawn, or dusk. Now for energy codes like Title 24, on-off control is not enough. In parking garages where there's a combination motion and daylight sensor in every light, one of the biggest issues we've seen is that you can't get a reliable reading from the surface of the garage. The garage is dirty, and there are cars moving through the structures, and those cars can even cause the sensors to falsely detect light. So what we recommend is using a sensor pointed out, as you can see in this picture, of the garage at the natural light versus down at the surface. And that one sensor can cover control for a whole group of lights on that side of the garage, which is very important for Title 24. Now, in energy codes like Title 24, there are criteria for how to control the lights, when there's the lights are at full sun or at nighttime or at partial sun. So at night, the lights have to be on. When you're in a full sun scenario, the lights have to be off. And those times in between where your sunrise or sunset or on cloudy days, lights need to be continuously dimming such that you're maximizing energy savings while preventing those light levels from dropping below the designed illuminance, which is a big deal for garages for safety purposes. So in our experience and what we've heard from customers is you just can't do this in a system with an integrated daylight sensor in every light. You need a motion sensor pointing out towards the natural light that is controlling all the light. So in this example, you can see there's the daylight sensor And so all of the lights in the daylight zone are off because we're in a full sun scenario. And then the lights on the interior of the level are on. And then this shows you a power graph from the system from one of these lights that are in that daylight zone. You can see just before 6 a.m. when the sun is coming up, the light is slowly starting to dim all the way to the point where at about 8 a.m. the light shuts off. Now, if the clouds were to roll in, which when we were actually doing this commissioning, that it was sunny in the morning, clouds came in the afternoon, and we could see the lights come on very slowly and move very slowly as the clouds would pass over until the sun came back out. So it works really well, and it's designed so that customers can pass those audits for those stringent energy codes. Problem 3, I need to quickly identify and resolve problems with my light. So next to energy savings, this is the most important thing we've heard from our customers. They want to know if a light has failed without having to wait for someone to report the problem. Dead lights can cause safety issues in parking garages, so it's a big deal to get those problems resolved as quickly as possible. And because of the real-time nature of SimplySnap, you immediately see any problems when you log in. So you can see here's a light on the map has a red circle on it. When you click on it, a sidebar is revealed that gives you more details about that. But you don't have to log into the system to find problems. The system can send you emails proactively, which you see here is in this example, if it detects any problems or faults with the lights, the drivers, power supply, whatever, in the lights that are managed by the system. All right, problem 4, I need lighting that will integrate with my facility's operations. So if you have a corporation or a large enterprise that has a parking structure, it's not uncommon for them to already have some sort of building automation system in place for control of other lighting systems, HVACs, other building management components. They are going to require that the lighting controls can talk to those systems. And so with our BMS gateway, we can be controlled by those existing building automation systems using BACnet or Modbus. Problem 5, I need to manage the garage in multiple locations. So in this example, customer has 2 different garages in different areas. They want to easily manage both sites from the same interface. So to show you how this would work in SimplySnap, when you're logged into one site, you select the menu, then the drop-down next to the user account, you select change site. Then all of the sites that you're allowed to manage from your user account, you select the one that you want to log into from the drop-down list. And then there you are, you're logged into the other site. So we've worked really hard over the past couple of years to add capabilities to SimplySnap to make it easier for customers with multi-site operations, which we are becoming more common with these parking garage structures, to be able to be managed much more easily by our lighting control system. And our last problem, I have a large parking lot next to the garage. I need to manage it from the same system. So like I mentioned earlier, we've already have our controllers embedded in site and area lights, high bays from leading fixture manufacturers. So you just have to check your fixture manufacturer's line card for existing SKUs. And if it's not already there, we can probably work with them to get it added. There are also other options with the bolt-on controllers, our twist lock controllers, ways that we can bring other adjacent lights next to the parking structure under the control of SimplySnap. You have here a few examples of those. So here's some decorative lights that might be next to a garage, site and area lighting. Here we can control wall packs, the parking lot lights, the interior lighting, as well as sign control. And then over here you got bollard lights, pathway lights that we're doing a control of with circuit switching. So while there are some unique challenges in parking structures versus your typical site and area lighting, we do believe SimplySnap's the best product on the market to step up and meet those challenges. We've heard this time and time again from our customers. We have a team of experts who have experience in dealing with energy codes. Michael's excellent at it. We've all learned a lot from him. We've done a lot with quoting, installing lights and sensors in these applications, and we're here to help. So if you have any questions, please reach out to us. We have support services all the way from the pre-sales side to commissioning and then on to post-sales support for your customers. I do cover that in more detail in the other webinar. So if you haven't had a chance to watch that again, make sure you go check that out in the link that Joe will be sending out. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Joe.
All right, thanks, Rob. You can just leave your screen up. So I think we're right on time. That was actually really good. We had a few questions come in. If you guys see the link on the screen there, this is really where a lot of our partners will issue questions about our system. to the support.synapsewireless.com. It lets you basically file a request, and we'll assign that to the appropriate person and get back with you. We also have a inbox set up for control.freak at synapsewireless.com, and we'll route those to the appropriate people. So you will close that slide, Rob. Let's see. So that is it.
Sharing?
So yeah, no, you can leave it up.
Okay.
Let's just see what kind of questions came in. Jamie, I know you were kind of working some of the Q&As that came in during the event. Do you have any that you want to share with us? I will unmute you, Jamie.
Thank you very much. I couldn't unmute myself. Thanks for doing that. Yeah, we had one question come in, and maybe, I know, Rob, you've helped folks with this in the past. The question was, how do I demo SimplySnap to my customers? Is there an easy way for folks to be able to do that, to show like the user interface and things like that you showed during your part of the presentation?
Sure. So the short answer to that is you can absolutely just send a request over, and we're happy to do that for you. And the other way to do it is if you can get, so we have the way to give you a login to from our cloud server, SimplySnap cloud.com. So we can make it so that you can log in and take a look and show it to your customer. So there's that option. And then if you have a gateway and you have some lights, in a demo setup, and that's something you can very easily hook up and connect to a network and then be able to show that from anywhere. So there's lots of different options. And so absolutely reach out to us. We can talk through the best option for you. I'm happy to do a demo with you for your customer, or make sure we have a demo site set up so that you can do it and show it to your customer as well.
Perfect. All right, let's see. I got one I see here. Michael, I'm going to let you take this. I know, Rob, you touched a little bit on the different kind of lights, and you mentioned like wall packs or pathway lights. Michael, can you explain a little bit more about kind of how those are managed in our system?
Yeah, absolutely. So pathway lights depends on if it's a bollard. There's a couple ways to handle that bollard. Is you can integrate one of our small controllers inside that bollard to control it. And we have some tiny controllers that are like 2 inches by 2 inches, and you can attach a antenna to it. Bollards have glass all around them, or plastic. So the signal gets out, talks to the parking deck or the parking lot. You can control it that way. You can put it on a schedule where at dusk it comes on, then at dawn it goes off. Then there's other stuff like wall packs. You can tie those in as well, either with a contactor that has a controller back in the electrical closet or somewhere, or sometimes floodlights and wall packs will have their own controller embedded in them, and they'll allow you to give individual control to light up the side of a building or just a spotlight on the area that somebody might be walking around at night.
Gotcha. All right. Let's see. Yeah, time for maybe another one. Let's see. Basically, I guess this is about dead zones. Try to read in a couple of the words. Basically, the suggestions are kind of what are the best way of handling some of the, we see dead zones with occupancy sensors and things. What are the ways or suggestions of how to handle those? I guess this is for Rob. Let you take that one.
Yeah. So, when we were talking about the remote mount sensor, we had a garage, this wasn't terribly long ago, where they were wanting to add coverage to the on-ramp that kind of comes onto the level. So you could kind of, before you get into the garage, the ramp would go along the outside. So, you wouldn't come onto a level unless it was a level you were trying to get to, as opposed to a garage that has ramp that kind of runs through the hole. So you have to go through every level to get to the top. So, and there wasn't a light in that spot that could really pick up the cars quick enough as they were coming onto the level. So they added a remote sensor right there, mounted just at the edge where you kind of pull up, and that would turn all of the lights in that area of the garage on. So it was very easy to do, just kind of added extra sensor coverage. And we've also seen people do that. I think I mentioned this, but in parking garages where like if you've got a company and people are leaving and they're walking, into the garage, you can put a sensor there, like on the stairwell, so that when they're coming out of the elevator or the stairs, you can have the lights in that area also turn on. So just kind of adds the extra ability to do sensing in more locations where the integrated sensors that are oftentimes in a fixture, or if there's no integrated sensors, there may be a garage with just lights that don't have motion sensors, and you just want to put a few of them in strategic spots. You do have that option with that remote mount sensor.
Gotcha. All right. There's one question about the presentation being available. We will make a recording of this presentation. We'll send a link out. Probably be first part of next week with the follow-up links and everything. And Jamie, you have one, too? Let's see. Jamie, are you there? Unmuted you.
All right, I'm back now. Thank you. Yeah, we got a couple other questions. One is, what condition triggers an email alert? Rob, you may have the best information on that one. What types of events would trigger an email alert?
So pretty much any alarm that's in the system can generate an alert. So you in a scenario where you've got power information from a driver, so not every system has that, but if you have if we're using like a Dolly 2 controller that's connected into a driver, or if it's one of our controllers that has onboard power monitoring, you can set it up to alert if the power that's being drawn by that controller, by that driver, goes above or below a tolerance value. So that's also configurable. So you could say, 5% above or below what's expected, generate an alert. And so it would email you and tell you, hey, the active power threshold for that light is above, what the threshold you need to investigate. Or if a light loses power where we can't talk to the controller anymore, that's going to generate an alert. If someone's trying to log into the system, has a incorrect username and password, that's going to generate an alert. So that kind of thing. Pretty much any event when you log in that you would see in the alarms dashboard can also generate an email alert from the system. Now, the one caveat to that is the gateways would have to be online. So they just would have to be on a network such that they could get out, to email servers to send an email.
And one other question, and Michael, I think you've had some experience in this. How do you handle UL 924 generator transfer? Is there a software approach? How would we handle UL 924 in general?
Well, there's two key ways. Is lots of times the OEMs who are selling the luminaires will have capabilities to do the emergency lighting. So we'll have products that they resell from some manufacturers that make this equipment. And another way to fold it in is there's a company called LVS who has some white papers about how to take network controls and put their control in between the generator and us. And basically what you have to do is you have to remove the dimming wires and remove the control that's exerted by the network lighting control. So we've worked in a lot of different environments with this. And best thing to do is, call our customer support, or we can get you hooked up with one of the luminaire OEMs who have some really good solutions.
All right. Okay. Well, I know we've got a couple other questions that we aren't going to be able to squeeze into today's time, but we will follow up with the questions that are open. And we, again, thank you for joining us today. We'll probably have another one of these in a month or so. So look for invitations in the future. And you guys have a good afternoon and a good rest of your week. And we will talk again in the future. Thank you very much.